In my inaugural speech, I had already outlined in all of that the various strategies for development that I anticipated taking. And this was not a criticism of what went before. In essence, my predecessors spent time solidifying the base. But it was time to move on from the status quo, to change the focus from now an administration, making sure that, you had professors, making sure that you had basic services for students, to a transformation. And even though I had spent like 2 or 3 weeks prior to the inauguration developing this, the inaugural speech was 10 pages long, and somebody said, every time I thought the speech was over, you came on with something new. If we look at the vision statement, it was the transformation of the university as to the premier degree granting university in Belize and a recognized university in the region that responds to national needs and aspirations. So it focused on one, the development of the university as the national university, but also crossing borders and becoming a known entity in the region, meaning the Central American region that we were part of, but also the United States. And many of our students have gone on to renowned US and European university. We set as the mission statement for the university that the university would be a national multi-location institution committed to excellence in higher education. And now I add in something that didn't occur before, research. Because research goes hand in glove with higher education, but also national development. So research and service for national development. And as a catalyst for change, it provides relevant, affordable, and accessible educational and training programs that address national needs based on principles of equity, transparency, merit, accountability, etc. Before I came to UB, I'd served as executive director for the Belize Institute of Management for several years. I'd also been the director of training and scholarships at the Organization of American States. And those two experiences brought something very important. Well, let me add one more. I was also the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Education, and that enabled me to see the really big picture of education in this country. With the experiences garnered, I brought what I thought was a greater management discipline. So administration, human resources, etc., financing. The other thing that I brought was the whole idea of strategic planning and development. And the third thing I brought was that larger vision of education throughout the region, because the OAS covered universities in, well, North America, Mexico, Latin America, South America, and the Caribbean. So those three experiences helped to guide me as the president of UB. The management from the Belize Institute of Management and Strategic Planning, the bigger picture of education in Belize, and especially the national needs and priorities. Because as a PSU, you're privy to all of that. You know, not just the Ministry of Education, but all the other ministries. And of course, from the OAS, the bigger picture of education in the region and trying to establish linkages with other universities, especially in North America. In developing the strategic plan, I had the collaboration of Betty Flincham, of course, Keith Meiser, absolutely, and a gentleman from Western Kentucky. I think that is critical to see the link between what we did at Belcast, the transformation which we began then, which grew into the University of Belize, and then drawing on that history, the, the transformation, as opposed to maintaining the status quo. You know, the hardest part of that resistance was when we first started Belcast, incorporating the technical college. The teachers' college wasn't much of a problem. There were some individuals married to the past, but the technical. But by the time it became UB, and I came to UB, we didn't have that problem. The other thing is that there was a degree of association that I had with technical because I taught at the technical from 1976 to 77, and so with Morrison and all the other members of faculty. When we developed the strategic plan, we identified our strategic priorities, which we called objectives. And we identified 8 of them. I believe that those transformative years contributed significantly in laying the guidelines. So the first strategic area, and each strategic area had the various strategies to accomplish. But the very first one, called objective, was to improve the reputation of the University of Belize. At Belcast, that's where this entire story began of taking higher education into rather just post-secondary education, sixth form, to tertiary education. And in essence, that's when we started the whole notion of, we added on programs that were never offered before, such as the medical technology. I remember we used to send 1, maybe 2 public officers to England for a year. And I looked at it and I said, but we can do this in Belize. And in 1 year, we graduated 30. Moving education to tertiary level education. That's where we looked at the Teachers College. What it was at that time was Teachers College, and moved it and developed out of that a faculty of education, which is now what it is. So when I talk about objective number 1, to improve the reputation, I'm not saying that UB had a bad reputation. I'm not using reputation in that. I am saying as a recognized institution of higher learning, as the premier institution. If you look at the name of the strategic plan, it says transforming the University of Belize 2000 to 3000. And everybody said, what kind of a 2000 to 3000? I said, I'm not putting a limit of years on it. This is the thought. talk about how we're going to grow the student body, because it was like 1,700 at the time. And within a couple of years, we got it to more than 2,000, pushing 3,000. But the idea was to grow it into a nationally recognized institution and then internationally recognized as well. We decided we'd recruit good people. And we went out, we not only recruited, but trained, got scholarship programs, etc., but also promote research, relevant service, outreach. We also leveraged resources and opportunities for students and faculty through collaboration with external partners, especially Quebec. It's not something that happened overnight. It really began way, way, way back at Belcast. And it grew. It was supposed to be a student-centered university. Create programs that address women's issues, problems of sexual harassment, and activities that appeal to diverse students. Provide countrywide access to university programs. And the third strategy under that was ensure that the demographic profile of the student body more closely reflects the socioeconomic, ethnic, and cultural diversity of the country of Belize as a whole. So we had already implemented diversity programs, minority programs. We wanted the student body to reflect the demography. One of the major problems was getting teachers to come to Belize to live under terrible conditions, to do 2 years at Teachers College, and then social and health would grab them up, and we were making absolutely no inroad in increasing the percentage of trained teachers. During the summer, we would send people out to teach them, and maybe we'd bring them in for one course in Belize City. And within 2 years, we did it at 2 levels. One level which was purely by correspondence, and the other which involved mixed modality. And the program was so popular that they were invited by the OS to speak about it. One of the big thing in the strategic plan was to develop an online college so that the students could remain wherever they were, either by radio, by internet, however, could remain where they were, and we would be able to teach them. A major investment in the strategic plan was to be able to develop online teaching. We were trying to redefine how we saw matriculation, entry, qualifications, and graduation, giving credit for experiences, etc. Some of the very qualified Belizeans never finished high school. With online learning, we're able to change that kind of rigid requirement for entry and exit. And it would have increased, it would have made the student body reflect the profile even more. When we did that strategic plan, it took about 9 months to do that thing. It was based on very extensive consultation with the students, with the staff, with the faculty. And I say staff, different from faculty, but also the public sector, the business community. I remember some of those interviews. Okay, tell us, business community, private sector, what you want to see in a national university. We employed mixed modality. What I mean by that is some of it was distance learning as you're describing it. But in the plan of development, and we never got around to doing that, we were going to teach online learning where we established in Toledo, and unfortunately we couldn't establish because of the cost. But we would have these centers computer-based instruction, for lack of a better description. We would use the internet to teach with, etc. So, and in fact, we were trying to establish one in San Pedro to show that we really wanted to make the reach of UB national. So Punta Gorda, San Pedro, Corozal, of course, a significant portion of the effort was devoted to establishing these online learning centers. When we took over the Teachers College, we found out that all the district students were living under substandard conditions. It was punishment. You had a lot of broken families, children going without their mothers for 2 years, fathers going up the Belize and never coming back. You know, that sort of thing. It was really awful. To me, what was important was the transformation of UB from what it was to a national premier institution of higher learning. And that improvement in the reputation, accepting UB as a full-fledged university. I remember once I was asked to talk about diversifying, and we're talking about it, and somebody remarked afterwards that you sound like the World Bank. What I want to hear is, where will we get more money in Belize from the ministry? And somebody jumped up and said, well, why don't we tell government to charge more tax on cigarettes and give it to education? And I said, but if I were the minister, I'd charge a tax on cigarettes and give it to the Ministry of Health, who have to take care of all the people who have emphysema, etc., as a result of smoking. I think it's important for UB to diversify its source of fund. We were seeking to establish a foundation for the university, which would, and we tried to tap the alumni. But more than that, we would create a tax-free basis for donation, especially in the US. So we had to register this foundation, and we were going to do it in Delaware because that's where it was. Everybody registered their foundation. You have to move away from basically depending on the ministry to fund you. The ministry has diverse needs, and it's one of the things I brought as PS, and I knew what it was creating the budget, and it's a very difficult proposition. They've got to diversify and expand the funding basis. I really offer heartfelt congratulations to the university. I offer congratulations to the student body, to the staff, to the faculty, to the administration, and to President Palacio. I think that UB has grown and has established itself as a national university, but as the premier institution of higher learnings. I have every confidence in the current leadership.